Hi, everyone. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today, we have a little bit of history and language for you put together. We'll be talking about Sunday, origin of the name.
我们的中文标题是太阳之日，星期日。
I will read through the whole paragraph first, not the whole paragraph, the whole article first, as we always do with our articles, and then we three will go back and review each and every sentence for you. Please listen carefully. Looking at a calendar, we don't usually pay much attention to the names of the months or the 7 days of the week. They've just always been that way, and chances are we never felt the need to question their origins. These names, however, especially the ones for the days of the week, have a rich and interesting history. One of the 7 days with the most fascinating background is the seventh day, Sunday. It's the last day of rest we have before going back to school or work on Monday morning, and a day on which Christians and Catholics worship their God in church. The history behind this name originates with the Anglo-Saxons from Germany in the 5th century. Around this time, the Anglo-Saxons conquered most of the island of Britain, bringing their culture and beliefs with them. Instead of invisible gods, they worshipped tangible things like the moon, sun, and fire, and named their days of the week accordingly. Their old word for Sunday is Sunnendag, which literally translates as Day of the Sun. In pagan times, sun worship was prevalent in Europe, and modern Germanic languages all have their own equivalent of the name Sunday. It's Sondag in Danish and Norwegian, and Søndag in Swedish. When Christianity began sweeping through the continent, anything pagan was immediately condemned, and a monotheistic belief system was established. Latin-derived languages, at the center of the movement, adopted the Lord's Day for the seventh day instead. As such, Sunday is dimanche in French, domingo in Spanish and Portuguese, and domenica in Italian. However, Sunday just stuck with most people and would eventually make its way into modern English language use.
Okay, so looking at a calendar, we don't usually pay much attention to the names of the months or the 7 days of the week. Until that is, we have to learn them in a different language. And then we're like, why? Why do we have such weird names? Gosh. But after a while, you learn them, you get used to them, and then you stop paying attention to them again.
And that's why it's so cool to learn Chinese.
Yeah.
The days of the week.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
I was
What a
so
relief.
relieved. I was like, finally, a sensible naming system. Gosh.
所以我们刚才聊到就是这个像英文还有很多语言里面呢，一个礼拜的7天都有不同的名字啊，你要一个一个去学。好，那但是呢，这个 Bruce 老师说，可是学到中文的时候觉得很简单，因为中文只要星期后面加个星期1、2、3、4、5、6啊，那这礼拜天就是星期日就可以了啊。
No, 1月1号
Yeah.
Everything is numbers. Yeah, that makes way more sense.
Yeah, 啊，那月也是一样啊，1月到12月啊。好，我们看到这个句子，第一句他说，我们看一下这个日历呢。We don't usually， 通常我们不会 pay too much attention to something 啊。Pay too much attention 就是过度的注意啊，也就是说，当我们看月历的时候呢，我们通常不会太注意啊。We usually don't pay much attention to， 我们通常不会太注意。The names of the months 就是月份的名字啊，或者是 the names of the 7 days of the week， 或者是一周7天的名字，我们通常不会太注意。
They've just always been that way. Sometimes when we're learning our own language as children, we don't question, and why do we say that's a tree? Where does that word come from? We just learn these things, and we assume that people learn their different languages in their own way as well. Chances are we never felt the need to question their origins. We don't really care where the sound tree comes from. We just want to match it with something that we see, and everyone agrees to the same thing with the same name. That's how we process our language skills as we accumulate language.
所以呢 they've just always been that way. 他们就是一直都是这样啊，永远都是这样子啊，这名字就是名字啊，本来就是叫 Sunday 啊，本来就是叫 Monday 啊。然后呢 chances are 后面通常会有一个 that， 就是很有可能啊，很有可能怎么样？很有可能 we never felt the need to do something， 我们从来不觉得有需要要干嘛。好，所以很可能我们从来不觉得有需要要 question their origins， 要质疑他们的来源哈，这个到底怎么来的呢？为什么是这样子呢？好，但是我们看月历的时候呢，看日历的时候，看到月份的名字，看到星期的名字，我们不会去想说，哎，为什么这个名字是这样子呢？为什么叫 January 呢？好，为什么叫 Monday 呢？我们不会去想。
These names, however, especially the ones for the days of the week, have a rich and interesting history. Actually, all names have a rich history. They just do, because the way that people name things, we name things for stuff that's meaningful to us. And so, of course, there's going to be meaning and history behind a name.
Yeah, 那这些名字呢 however, 好 especially the ones for the days of the week. 好，这些名字表示月份跟这个星期几的这个名字呢，所以他说这些名字，尤其是一周7天的名字呢 have a rich 有一个很丰富的，还有 interesting 有趣的历史。
And of course, people's names, we take it for granted that, oh, it's just a name. But did you know, for example, that the men's name Wesley came from weasel?
No.
Are you just making that up right now to cause trouble, or is that real?
Actually, I checked.
And?
The name means meadow in the West.
Meadow?
Yeah.
M-E-T-A-L?
Grassland.
Oh, meadow.
Meadow.
Yeah. Meadow in the West.
Oh, yeah, actually, that makes sense.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
So you're
that's
a flat piece of land
meaning.
with grass all over it.
Flat? No, you need another word.
Hilly?
Yeah. Anyway.
Moving right along.
Bumpy. Sorry. Moving right along. One of the 7 days with the most fascinating background, the most interesting of the 7 days of the week, is the seventh day, Sunday. Now, calling it the seventh day in itself is interesting because that was from the Bible, where God supposedly rested on the seventh day, and that's why Sunday is a day of rest. Other people consider it the first day of the week. So it's interesting, even numbering, even what we call the numbers of the week, have their own history and background to it.
Yeah, 好，所以他说 one of the 7 days， 好，这7天里面有一天，好，那这一天 one， 好，后面那个 with the most fascinating background， 这个是修饰那个 one， 好，所以7天里面有一天，它有最 fascinating， 最令人觉得这个惊讶的，好，会让人觉得很妙的一个 background 背景的这么一天呢，就是第7天 the seventh day， 好，也就是礼拜天。好，那这个当然有不同的算法，也有人认为礼拜天是一个礼拜的第一天。
It's the last day. It refers to the preceding Sunday, is the last day of rest. In the Bible, they also had 7 weeks of 7 days. And as God was creating the universe on day 1, something happened through day 6. But on the 7th day, he rested. So that is the Christian tradition of day of rest. And we have that before going back to school or work on Monday morning. And it's a day on which Christians and Catholics worship their God in church. A day of rest was felt to be something very special. If God rested on that day, then we should rest on that day, and we should do this as a community. We should do this in our churches.
Yeah, 所以他说 it's the last day of rest， 这是最后一天可以休息的啊，最后一个休息的日子。We have 就是我们有的最后一天可以休息的日子。在什么之前的最后一天呢？ Before going back to school or work， 在我们回到学校上课或者回去上班 啊，这是在礼拜一的星期一的早上，所以意思就是说，这是我们在礼拜一早上要回到学校，要回到工作岗位之前，我们所有的最后一天可以用来休息的日子啊，叫做 It's the last day of rest we have before going back to school or work on Monday morning。然后 and a day 它也是一天啊，在这一天怎么样 on which 就是在这一天 Christians and Catholics 就是基督教徒跟天主教徒他们会 worship 会敬拜 their God 他们的上帝 in church 在教堂里面敬拜他们上帝的日子，也就是礼拜天上教堂的日子。
Christians and Catholics? Catholics aren't Christians.
Yes. On the other hand, Catholics, among whom I was raised, we make the distinction.
Oh.
Christians are Christians.
Yeah.
Christians are Protestants and all of the various different beliefs. Catholics are Catholics. And so there's actually 3 Jesus-worshiping churches. One is the Orthodox, which is Eastern,
right.
The Eastern Orthodox Church. Yeah. One is the Catholic Church, and one is all the various flavors of Protestants.
Yeah.
So we definitely distinguish. We as Catholics, which I can still claim, I guess, even though I'm not
a churchgoer.
I don't believe in Catholic religion anymore. But as someone who was raised Catholic, I can definitely tell you that Catholics and Christians are separate categories.
Yeah, 所以这里呢，就是这个其实，你如果总称的话呢，这个天主教啊，或者是这个基督教，或者是新教啊，还有东正教呢，都是 Christians 啊，但是在教派之间彼此会有区别，例如说天主教徒他们认为他们是 Catholics， 好，那在他们心中呢，像刚刚Angela 老师讲，他小时候就是这个他抚养是在天主教的文化里面长大的，他们就认为他们是 Catholics， 那其他的人这 Christians 尤其就是指什么？指那个新教的教徒啊，就宗教改革之后的那个新教啊，还有很多其他的教派，那个叫 Christians。那其实在基督教这个或者在基督这个信仰里面呢，除了 Christians 跟这个 Catholics 之外呢，还有东正教啊，所以这个这主要3个支流啊，所以在这里呢 Christians 跟 Catholics 是分开来讲的。
So the history behind this name originates with the Anglo-Saxons from Germany in the 5th century. I need to specify the history behind this name for English originates with the Anglo-Saxons from Germany.
好。所以呢，这个在这个名字就是英文这个名字的这个历史呢，是从什么时候开始呢 ？Originates with 就是以什么为起源啊？从什么时候开始呢？从这个盎格鲁撒克逊人啊，他们是从这个德国来的这样的一个民族啊，是从他们开始的。这个是在第5世纪的时候开始的。
Around this time, the Anglo-Saxons conquered most of the island of Britain,bringing their culture and beliefs with them. Now, the Anglo-Saxons were European, if you like, the European heartland, where Germany is today, and parts of France, parts of Eastern Europe. In fact, there's a state in Germany, Saxony, Saxony, around where Berlin is today. And,these warriors, like the Vikings in the north, or the Anglo-Saxons on the mainland of Europe, they waged war right over to what we call Great Britain today, the largest island of which can be called Britain. Some people call it England, but
England is only one section of the island.
Politically, but on geographic maps you often see the island of England,or the island of Britain. And, of course, people bring their culture and beliefs with them no matter where they go.
It's true.
所以 around this time 就是指大概在西元5世纪的时候呢，这个盎格鲁撒克逊族他们 conquered 他们征服了 most of the island of Britain 他们征服了这不列颠岛大部分的这个地方所以其实这个我们讲Anglo-Saxons 他们其实不是英国的原住民很多人会搞错了那英国的原住民其实是 Picts 的其中一个很大的族叫 Pics
and also Celts, yes?
还有 Celts 这两个两个是最重要的最大的英国的原住民
Yeah, actually Anglo-Saxons are German 原住民
Yeah, Anglo-Saxons 他们其实是这个从德国来的所以他们征服了英国的这个岛这个 大不列这个不列颠岛the island of Britain， 然后把他们的文化还有他们的信仰一起带过来了，bring with them 就带过来了。
So instead of invisible gods, like the most monotheistic religions now have invisible gods, these people worshipped tangible things. Tangible means things you can touch, well, or see at least, because not that you're touching the sun and the moon, and nobody really tries to touch fire, or they only do it once. Anyways, they worshipped things that are visibly present in the world, tangible things like the sun, the moon, and fire, and they named their days of the week accordingly. Accordingly means along the same pattern, according to, or going...
In accordance.
In accordance with, like...
In the same way.
In the same way, or following a pattern of.
好，所以呢，这个 instead of 他们不用这个 invisible gods 那 invisible 是看不到的visible 就是看得见的，因为那个 vis 就是 see 的意思所以 invisible in 是 not 的意思，所以 invisible 就是看不见的所以他们不去敬拜那个看不见的神那这个他们敬拜的是他们 worship 的是 tangible things tangible 这个 tan 这个字根就是 touch 的意思，所以 tangible 它原来的意思就是 capable of being touched但是你也可以延伸一下capable of being touched or felt or seen even 所以简单来说就是有实体的碰得到的having real substance。 所以这里讲到月亮太阳火火你碰不到，但是至少看得到，所以他们会敬拜这些这个有实体的看得见的碰得到的东西那他们也同样的 named their days of the week， 他们就为他们一个星期的这个日子命名accordingly 就是按照相对应的，按照同样的方法同样的模式，以这些碰得到的东西看得见的东西来命名。
Their old word, the Anglo-Saxons, for Sunday is Sunnendag, which literally translates as day of the sun. In modern German, it's almost the same, Sonntag, 大写的 S-O-N-T-A-G.
OK， 那他们的 old word， 他们比较旧的那一个字用来指 Sunday 的那个旧的字呢，就是这个这个底下这个长得很可爱的字然后呢 which literally 这个字呢字面上 literally 就是照字面的这个 word for word 或者是这个 in a literal manner 字面上 translates as 翻译过来就是 day of the sun， 就是太阳的那一个日子。
Now in pagan times, to say pagan times, this is like a catch-all term for pre-Christian times. And this is actually a very Christianized word to describe that era. I don't think pagan people would call it pagan times. They'd call it before those dang Christians arrived. So, anyways, in pagan times, sun worship was prevalent in Europe. Prevalent means it was more common than common. It was just extremely common in that area. And modern Germanic languages all have their own equivalent of the name Sunday. I want to ask you, as a linguist, are Danish and Norwegian considered Germanic languages?
Yes.
That's the name of it? Okay, I hadn't realized that. Okay, so all of these languages, Northern European languages, tend to have similar words, and they all have their own equivalent, they all have their own version of the name Sunday.
OK， 好，所以我们看到 in pagan times 这个字也可以念 pagan 那它就是异教的意思，它原来的意思其实是多神教的那这个字其实字根我去查了一下，很有趣，它原来的字根呢是指乡下人或者是 civilian 是这个平民，为什么呢？因为他们不是 a soldier of Christ。 好，所以 pagan 这个字或者 pagan 这个字很有趣所以呢在这个异教的时代呢 sun worship 就是太阳崇拜 was prevalent 就是盛行widespread 的意思那非常 common 的意思。那在欧洲太阳崇拜在异教时代，在异教徒时代非常的盛行。然后呢现代的这些 Germanic languages 现代的这些日耳曼语系的语言呢都有他们的 equivalent 就是相等的东西of the name Sunday， 所以英文叫 Sunday， 那在所有的这个日耳曼语系的语言里面都有一个 Sunday 的 相等的一个字。
It's Sondag in Danish and Norwegian and Söndag in Swedish.
OK， 好，所以呢，我们刚刚讲在其他的日耳曼语系的语言里面都有同样的一个字，相等的一个字。所以呢，在丹麦语跟挪威语当中呢，是这个大概是念 Sondag 然后呢，这个瑞典语是念这个长得很像的一个字。
So when Christianity began sweeping through the continent, and that's a very good way to describe it, to sweep through something, you can imagine like a wind blowing through a room, or like a broom sweeping across the floor. It's a swift, fast movement. Swift means fast. It's a swift movement. So when Christianity began sweeping through the continent, anything pagan was immediately condemned. This is what happens when there's a change in power. The old power structures are denigrated and attacked in order to make room for the new power structure. And so a monotheistic belief system was established. Monotheistic means belief in one God. Mono is one, and theistic is, or the is
God.
Yeah, is a God. And then istic is just having to do with. So it's having to do with the belief in one God belief system was established.
好，所以当这个基督教开始横扫欧洲的时候那 continent 这个大陆就是指欧洲大陆，那 sweeping through 就跟中文的横扫是一样的意思所以当基督教开始横扫欧洲的时候呢，任何跟异教有关的东西呢，都立刻 immediately 被 condemned 被谴责甚至于被判罪，就是 condemn。然后呢，一个一神教的monotheistic mono 就是一那所以单一神教的一种 belief system 一个信仰的体系呢就被建立了。
Latin-derived languages at the center of the movement adopted the Lord's Day for the seventh day instead. So we've been talking about the Sun's Day, S-U-N, the Sun's Day for Anglo-Saxon or Germanic languages, and the Christian movement came through Southern Europe, and for them that day was the Lord's Day. The seventh day of the week was the Lord's Day, not the Sun's Day.
好，所以呢 Latin derived 就是衍生所以从拉丁文衍生出来的这个语言languages， 那 at the center of the movement， 在这个也就是变成单一神教的这个运动的中心那这样的一种这个源自于拉丁文的语言呢，他们就 adopted， 他们就采用了adopt 就是采用的意思，采用了 the Lord's Day for the seventh day instead， 所以他们不用这个 Sunday他们不用the day of the sun， 他们用 the Lord's Day 来取代了。
As such, because this happened, Sunday is dimanche in French, domingo in Spanish and Portuguese, and domenica in Italian. And all of these have the same Latin root, and they share it with dominant and dominate. They're all about, because a lord is someone who dominates other people. They're the one that is in power. So these are all words about power. Which is interesting to me.
Yeah, 好，所以呢，这个星期日在法文、在西班牙文、在葡萄牙语都有它这个，还有意大利文里面都有这个类似的一个字。那他们这些字好像都跟 dominate 有关就是这个因为上帝是主宰一切的所以蛮有趣的。
However, Sunday just stuck with most people and would eventually make its way into modern English language use. So officially, people changed to the Catholic way to describe the seventh day of the week, but up in northern and far western Europe, the day-to-day folks, they still call that day Sunday.
好，但是呢 Sunday 这个字呢仍然 stuck with most people stuck with most people stuck with 就是 remain attached 就大家还是黏住还是用住还是喜欢用这一个名字然后呢这个名字 would eventually 就是after a long time 或者一个 long delay 最后终于这个字呢 make its way 就是找到路进去了逐步取得了成功进入了什么？进入了现代的这个英语的用法。
Okay, guys, are you ready for your reading comprehension questions?
Yes, I'm
Okay,
ready.
then. The first one is, who is credited with the first known use of the name for the seventh day of the week?
Sunday, by the way.
Yeah, 是谁第一次使用一个星期的第7天的这个名字呢？
Well, the answer is the Anglo-Saxons from Germany.
好，所以是从日耳曼地区来的盎格鲁撒克逊人。
And number 2, what is the main source of the differences between Germanic and Latin versions of Sunday?
好，所以 Sunday 的日耳曼语版和拉丁语版的差异，主要的来源是什么？
It's the pagan versus the Christian religion. So the pagans called it the Day of the Sun, and the Christians called it the Day of the Lord.
好，所以答案简单的说就是宗教的问题，因为宗教不同。
That's it for today's lesson. Hope you learned something. We even learned a little bit here about language today. Until next month, the next time we'll be back with you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.